Good evening. I heard a story. I think it's a true story. Yeah, one of our friends, one of the days as he was entering the house, he found his beautiful nanny breastfeeding their only son. Surprised as he was, he asked the nanny what was happening. The nanny explained that the child cries non-stop, and the only way to stop him from crying is to give him the breast. And which is true for most nannies. Most of us don't know how nannies take care of our babies. At times I find my nanny is HIV positive and can go breastfeeding my child, don't know. And the nanny is saying, yes, this child cries non-stop, and the only way to stop him from crying, I breastfeed him. And then the nanny further explained that, but Papa, there's nothing coming out of my breast. And yeah, there's nothing coming out of my breast. If you don't trust me, please come and test. And Papa was thinking, and he went, as he was trying to, and the wife entered. You can imagine what is still happening now. Without much ado, my name is Dr. Snomadi. I'm a member of Provincial Executive Committee of the BMF Limpopo. I'm really privileged to be your program director today. As you all have your programs, it's not long. We believe it's time to network, it's time to know, to learn, time to share, and time really to go back and say who really this man was. My belief and my understanding is, if it was in some country, if some country happened to have hosted a man of this stature, there could be a statue somewhere or in every town with his name or with his body or his face. There could be some name, maybe in some England they will say member of British Empire. Even some countries they will say Negota. In some places they will say Prof, whatever. But I believe with us, this is the day to start. And without much ado, I'll be calling on my chairperson, Angela Maipadi, to give us opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony, Dr. Snomadi, our family in Black Management Forum, our President, Andile Nomulala, the stalwarts of the Black Management Forum present here this evening, Ubaba Bekisbia, our professors present here, led by Prof. Maluleke, the senior, and the Profco members in the province, the Manco, the young professionals of the Black Management Forum, our student chapter, Black Management Forum members. It's you who are mostly happy today that this day has happened. It's the day that we've been yearning for. Of course, our sister organizations, I believe our chairperson in the Limpopo United Forum, which is the organization or the umbrella organization in the province, is in our midst here and is here on behalf of all organizations, NAFCOC, and all those organizations that our stalwart, George Negota, belongs to. We've got business people here. We've got all professionals because BMF is an organization for professionals. We are so glad that you have been able to attend this August occasion, which we prepared for you, just to come and honor our stalwart, our past president, George Negota. You are going to hear more about him today. You are going to envy his being. You are going to join me when I support what our president is saying and is advocating, the Tumamina. And when I heard about George Negota, I said, if I was there during his time, I was going to say, I'm available to Mamina. Let me indicate that George Negota was a type of his own caliber. As Black Management Forum, we are proudly saying to you that we've got branches the whole country. It's because of his initiatives. He was a visionary. And today in Limpopo, we've got Black Management Forum because of him. He is the son of the soil. Limpopo is his home. I would like to appreciate the family for having allowed us to host this event this evening. I'd also like to appreciate your being, our family, that despite the fact that you've got bereavement in the family, you still said, yes, let the event continues. And I'm saying, let our little brother soul rest in peace. And may you as well have peace, and may God be with you as you'll be laying him to rest this Saturday. To our president, you have made me proud. The first day you came to Limpopo this year, you announced that we should host the memorial lecture of George Negota. Something that has been in my mind the time I was still the deputy chairperson of Black Management Forum. And when you took over and I took over the baton, we put our heads together and we have made this day a success. All those who make sure that they supported us and make sure that today we gather in this fashion. We all know that we said we are launching this memorial lecture. It's not for us, but it's for the generation to come. Our plan as Black Management Forum is that we're going to join hands together with our universities, the University of Venda, University of Limpopo, and make sure that the lessons that we have learned from our gallant are taken to the right space, and they are going to sharpen the brains of the Black child. On that note, I'm not the one who is going to fully welcome you, but please feel at home. In my language, in my other second language, because I'm a woman, you can see, I have first, second language. In another second language, we also say rirote. Thank you very much.
Provincial Chair, Mpirute Haudiring, Realeboga. Without much waste of time, Retohopela, our president of the BMF, to be telling us, Barre is the living who closes the eyes of the dead, but the dead is the dead who opens the eyes of the living. How did Dr. Negota open your eyes? Is the living who closes the eyes of the dead, but it's the dead that opens the eyes of the living. I believe all of you who came here, maybe your eyes will be opened. Some of us are no oxygen malfase. Some of us are no oxygen malfase. I get it. The saying our some die at 21 only to be buried at 81 is true. But with Dr. Negota it was different. Nane remita number 6. Let's one number 6. Hale feletse go gaming le ra le bapela. Of food, Prof. He was number 6, no? Everywhere he went, he had friends. And I li busy le bolela a fitla o tlo replace the speaker. Yeah, le motafuleng le bolela a fitla. Yeah. O kushare le bolela marbe lo tlo bolela yena. But without much ado, our president is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc, very much. I just need to time myself because I can speak for hours on end. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andile Nomlala. Those that know me very well, they call me Nobula, which is my clan name. I'm a grandson of Ungwaibanjwa, Umgwabini, Onobula Mazimba Mhlope Nabomvu Ngofu. I want to, first of all, greet the family of the Negota family and speedily pass on and greet my predecessors, President Pegis Biya. And I want to tell you that there are 13 presidents of BMF since it was born in 1976. 10 of them are still alive, and 3 of them are no longer with us. They are with us in spirit. One of them is the one that we're commemorating today. I want to greet Professor Tinyiko Maluleke. We are saying thank you for agreeing to come and be a guest speaker and speak about the gentleman of Babu Nengota's magnitude. I want to greet his colleagues and friends that came to honor this day just to remind themselves of a close friend that they have had. With me, I'm accompanied by my fellow board members, Esetu Mangojwa, a Klaas Gropa. Klaas Gropa is a young gentleman from this province who's a national chairperson of young professionals. I want to greet the provincial chairperson of BMF, Mayor Enji. She's also a director of BMF, my colleague in the BMF board. I see the leadership of BMF in Limpopo. I see the leadership of BMF in this branch called Pulukwane. I see the leadership of BMF in the student chapter level. And I want to say I greet you all in the name of moving South Africa forward. Mine is very short. I'm not going to try to bring a lecture. Mine is to just reflect on the very few encounters I had with Babu Negota. The one of which, by the way, he was speaking at the memorial service of President Don Mkhwanazi in Johannesburg. I was the chairperson of BMF in Western Cape at the time. One thing that I still remember very vividly, and which when you follow his path and his responsibility and roles in his life becomes very clear. The gentleman had lived many years ahead of himself. Babu Negota reminded the BMF mourners at Don Mkhwanazi Memorial Service and said BMF was founded on the principles of wanting to transform our society economically. And the main agenda at the time was to bring in a sizable number of black managers into senior positions in corporate South Africa. That battle was a battle that we see as the BMF leaders today as an assimilation exercise, where we want to fit in to an already established system of other people. But his foresight on the night, on the evening, or the afternoon rather, of that day, he said, and I took his words to heart. He said, this is the time that BMF must translate the knowledge, the experience that is acquired from the corporate corridors of our country for us, particularly black managers, to start building our own businesses. Colleagues, it has not been more evident than now the need for black people to stand up and be counted. We can no longer find ourselves in the periphery of the economic fortunes. We can no longer stand by and look and remain only observers in the game that we're supposed to be playing. Babu Negota was very clear that this is the time for those of us, a marginally few of us who have transcended the life of being impoverished to a middle class level, that we must build black organic businesses that have the character of our cultures, that have the character of our history, that have the character of our experiences. Unfortunately, many of us are still finding it joyful and necessary, and I also support that they must, because when we transform our society, we have to transform it from the culture and the outlook that it is today to a total picture of what we want to see tomorrow. And as Africans, with an 80% presence in the country, demographically, it means that the picture and the outlook of our corporations, of our organizations, and of our own businesses must reflect the demographics of our country. Unfortunately, today, many of us are too comfortable to offer their trade, justifiable so, in exchange for a rand, in corporations that don't embrace their cultures. Even those of us who are given positions of senior stature and responsibility as executives, we don't find it necessary when we assume those positions to do what is supposed to be done to transform them. This thing called transformation, colleagues, is something that comes out of our own constitutional imperatives. It's not something that we thumbsuck as we move along. When we went to a negotiation table, we had written it down that we would endeavor to try and make South Africa a South Africa that everybody lives in, and where the wealth of our country is distributed equitable. 25 years down the line, unfortunately, we haven't made telling strides. 25 years down the line, others are even questioning the necessity to push transformation. When we have our economy in the position that is in today, where it is contracting, it's not growing, the argument that becomes prevalent, and we allow it to be prevalent, is that let's build the economy, let's focus on growth. Let's forget about the need to include the black marginalized people. But what those who claim to be knowledgeable in issues of economy, in issues of building societies, in issues of trying to take South Africa out of the doldrums that is in, forget one thing, that fundamentally the main basic problem that has resulted to a situation where our economy is at is the fact that millions of South Africans don't participate in the mainstream economy. You might hear the stories that are deliberately over-amplified, that the corruption of Jacob Zuma is the reason why we have this problem. That's a lie. Take it from us, the knowledgeable, informed young leaders of BMF, that if you want to believe that the problems of South Africa emanate in the last 10 years, then you must not have been here in the last 400 years. You must not have been here or be told or be taught about what has happened in the last 400 years. It is myopic and absolutely absurd to actually believe that we must accept that the problems we have only emanates to a mini myopic Gupta family participation. I don't want to, and don't quote me wrong, I don't want to say they didn't have an impact. But black people's problems are that we are not getting the best education in a democratic country, in a society that is led by black people. The quality of education of our own brothers and sisters, of your children, your sons and daughters, it is at abysmal low levels. We can't compete educationally with countries, colleagues, that don't even have a road infrastructure of 30 kilometers. Our own children are beaten by countries like Burundi, who are in the middle of a war for the last 20 to 30 years. Now, if you don't have education at any level or standard, you must understand that the economy itself is becoming a knowledge-based economy. It's no longer going to be possible for us to compete at the same level as people that have acquired the skill, the knowledge to build and develop fourth industrial revolution type businesses. And if you have in South Africa 9 million youth that goes through schooling system, only 1.2 million of them makes it to matric, then you must know that, in fact, the crisis we are in today is far less than the crisis that we will be in 15 years' time, when those kids' skills and knowledge are supposed to be contributing in building our society going forward. Now, if you want to deal with a problem, President Beki once told us, if you want to deal with a problem, you must first diagnose it properly. Because if you misdiagnose the problem or an illness, if you find yourself giving painkillers or headache pills for a person who has a stomach issue, then you must know that you're not going to solve the illness. Now, let's not be fooled, colleagues, and let's not take a backseat. The reality of the matter is that our country and our economy is in the doldrums because 95% of citizens occupy only 10% of South Africa's wealth. You have seen the Stats SA report that says 1% of our country's population controls 67% of our economy. Now, anyone who wants to tell you that the problem lies with corruption as an excuse, that's a diversion. Corruption obviously doesn't do us any great, because the little we have that is supposed to be channeled properly gets misused by selfish black people. I don't want to bring faults to any other races. We must all take responsibility of our own actions. The fact that you sit comfortable to go and buy a Range Rover at the expense of a family and communities that are supposed to use the money you stole to advance themselves is actually a shame. The reason why we don't progress today is because in the forefront of the people that are supposed to develop us, it's black leaders who have done what George Negota has warned us against, who have assimilated to the comfort and the luxuries of whiteness. We seek to be like them, and yet we fought for 400 years to get out of their chains. Today, you subject your own brothers, your sisters and cousins to the same oppression, economically, socially, and otherwise, that you were subjected to and your forefathers were subjected to. And as BMF we say, and we are very clear, we will challenge, first and foremost, the black leadership that is responsible for our future. We can no longer guarantee that we would be a sweetheart friends of the African National Congress. Our sweetheart relationship ends when they don't look like they have the interest of black people at heart. We can't accept and justify a cozy relationship that has no material benefit to our people. As BMF, we will look more like an opposition party than you have ever seen. But we don't seek to contest the political power. All we seek is to keep our own leadership accountable to deliver the services that they promise to our people. If in the process of contesting them, it happens that we expose their weaknesses so that the voters don't trust them anymore, it's not our fault. You can't blame us. But our responsibility is to make sure that we keep the ANC government accountable. I am very pleased, and I must say, whenever I walk to Polokwane or I drive to Polokwane, this is one of the very few cities that are black managed, that are developing. It almost becomes something that you have to see it as a wow when it's supposed to be a natural thing to happen. I come from Tata, and I said this thing here the other time. I come from Tata, and Tata is worse off than it was 15 years ago. I suppose Polokwane, I see the roads. Polokwane is developing to an extent that you could see that the people that are running this municipality have an interest of seeing development amongst black people. So we're not going to paint everybody with one brush. Those that do good, we will tell and build and want to encourage them to do more. But we're not going to praise a fish for swimming. We are not supposed to praise a fish for swimming. The people that are given the positions of responsibility, the positions of responsibility that comes with leadership, are not titles, are not things to sit in front of funerals, are not things to be called your name in important gatherings. The position of leadership means that you are entrusted by your very best own people to lead them to a promised land. Every time you accept to lead people like I did in the BMF, where sometimes things I say, they make me more unpopular than I would have ideally wanted. They threaten the income and the interest of my own child. But because I carry the responsibility of leading an organization where people want to see a certain messaging, I then become the bearer of the bad news. Unashamedly so. We have sent court papers, and I must report it here. There's a BMF constituency. We have filed court papers to challenge a decision that was made by the board of SAA and the minister about appointing a white male matriculant as a CEO of Mango. It's so funny and nice that not so long ago we were decrying the appointment of Claude Mutswaneng. But we find it very convenient. And I'm not even advocating for Claude Mutswaneng. I actually feel that he's a semi-illiterate individual who went out to bemoan black professionals. He made it as a sin for us to go to school. because he was backed by a culture, a strange breed of leadership in the ANC. For those of us who grew up in the movement, he was backed by a strange breed of leadership that saw us as clever blacks. But our cleverness, the unfortunate thing is that our cleverness never impacted nor were even heard. In fact, we were as coward as anything when the Gupta family was running riot in our country. I can tell you now that we have suspicions and a paranoia of allowing leadership to lead with impunity. Because when we were quiet, and I want to say this, when we were quiet and young, and we thought our elders would do the responsibility that elders do in every family to lead a family to a proper and a definite place where comfort is guaranteed, where peace is enshrined, where security is the order of the day. But what did our elders did? What did our elders do in the last 10 years? They have failed us. Now, it's no longer possible to think that the 67-plus-year-olds are leading this country for the benefit of us when we're 67. We're no longer going to trust them with that. We will not give trust to people that doesn't warrant trust. We will not give joy, impunity, comfort, and many of these things to people that we don't believe that they care about the future of our country. We will challenge unashamedly the leadership of President Ramaphosa at every turn where we suspect that he's erring. We would not give him the benefit of the doubt. We will contest the decisions that his ministers make at every turn, because what we are worried about is that we know that all of them were there in the last 10 years and they didn't do anything. Now we talk about 8.7 million youth in South Africa that haven't finished matric. And they all didn't finish matric in the last 25 years. And if you don't finish matric, nor have any vocational training, I can tell you for sure that you are a spare force in the future of our economic development. Now we are carrying casualties to the war because of a government that has failed us. Burundi is a developing country. It's in the middle of nowhere, no natural resources, nothing. They are building a tech city. So President Ramaphosa, we support him fully, but we don't trust with absolute certainty that their efforts and actions are meant for us. Therefore, at every turn, we'll keep them in check. In closing, I would say, Babu Negota once said, and all I've just said, by the way, is exactly the speech and the drawing that I took from Babu George when he was speaking at Don Kwana's lecture, memorial service. He had given us, and I went to speak to him afterwards, and he said, Mfana, manje asisekho la kuma managers e companies zabelungu. We want you to build businesses that when we talk about transformation, we're not talking about the race change, but we talk about the gender change, we talk about the culture change, we talk about the integration of Venda, Tswana, Sutu in your company. The battles that we are still fighting in the white companies is still just race. But unfortunately, when you pull the blacks up, they become more whiter than the whites that are there. We haven't yet fought the culture of being told that you can't go to a paternity leave because that person is not your parent biologically. Whilst as Africans, we have 9 parents. And as in literally, people that you can't miss their funerals. We haven't gone there yet. So the only way, the shorter route to that, we need to build our own multinationals. And don't believe the lie about state capture. The businesses that are firmed, the businesses that are white and affirmed in our economy were built through the apartheid system with similar philosophy and picture and outlook and orchestration as the state capture project. If you want to build a bank in Polokwane, the first demand you must have is that all government employees must be depositing their money into your bank. And then if those who want to call it a state capture, they must call it a state capture. But Volkskas and ABSA were not just became ABSA. There were British banks here when Afrikaners were building their banks. And they said very clearly that if you deposit your money at Standard Bank, it's going to appear in 15 days. But if you deposit it at Volkskas, it's going to appear within 24 hours. And that's how they built businesses. So it's not a shame to get opportunities out of the 600 billion rands that government is spending. But you direct it to yourself, and you build your own community, and you build a sustainable legacy business. We don't want to give you tender every 5 years, we change government, and you don't grow. Every time you want to loafer on a 100 million contract, and we give you a 100 million contract, and you spend it in Cubana, and you come back in 5 years' time, and you want another 100 million, whilst there's millions of blacks that are queuing up to benefit. Judge Negota said, I still see BMF as a hatching ground, not only for black professionals, but also for black business, in the sense that those who have got experience as managers can then break out and go and establish their own businesses. Their own businesses which are rooted in their own experiences and which are going to compete in the marketplace. I say, the responsibility of building our country lies in each one of us. Let's live a life like George Negota that is beyond ourselves. I thank you.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President. If you are not going to join BMF today, if you are not going to join BMF today, Mr. Home. If you are not going to join BMF today, that's my president. Not a hired shepherd, a true one. Not a hired shepherd, a true one. Yes, and he reminds me of the story I didn't want to tell you. Ne? I was advised, bricks. Where the S in bricks, should it remain small letter or capital letter, President? You know the answer. That S in bricks, should it be small letter or capital letter? Yeah, the S in bricks. Capital, ne? Emon, countries there go bricks. Tinal the numbers, 1.7 billion, 1.3 billion, what? How many billions do we have as a country? Okay, let's leave the billions. Let's go to the GDP. China analogai GDP ayon. India. But you can check out Singapore, small population. Canada, small population, and others. But GDP still high. What's our problem? But the problem is human capital. We have this, but we don't use it. So maybe we should leave that as, we must remove it or make it a small one, because, but what the president is saying, I think there's another chance to change. The 400 years are the 25 years, without much waste of time, President Rokwele, and as a province, in an Arutlawa Lehot, Lawal Lagatawe. In Arutlawa Lehotla, Tawea Walelwa, Ratara Raubija. Limpoper so. I carry Tawea already parting, Revelerdi, what, Revine, Wiki Diwe, it will fail. I got. Yes, realization in Ravolela, Ravina, Wiki Chawa, Ras report. No, President, report Amowen. Without much waste of time, it will watch our message from the sponsor. Without the sponsor, we wouldn't be here. And we, as President Aboleke, it's through sponsors like Old Mutual, today, in the black neighborhoods. Mr. Tomahapa, it's our vote, or it's only the Swarting Gidifi. I want to daily relay. We still want more. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I'd like to believe that through our President and our Chairperson that all protocol has been observed. So, I do not come from this part of the world, but I certainly have found myself a home in this part of the world. I was born and bred in Soweto, in Orlando East, actually. So every time I come around here, everybody tends to ask me that, and I promise you, first of all, I'm not very fluent in the Sepedi language, so it's also very difficult for me to articulate where exactly do I come from. I really wish I was from this part of the world because, like I said earlier, that I've certainly found myself a home in this part of the world, and it's because of the connectedness that I find here, especially with the people. You know, I'm sure most of you, or some of you that may have traveled, say, around, in particular, Africa, because I'm so passionate about Africa, that when you get there, your best experiences will always be articulated in the connections that you make with the people that you meet. And for me, that's what makes a wonderful holiday. I'm very thankful and very blessed and privileged to be standing in front of you in this august occasion. And I'm also grateful for the fact that, I've been given this opportunity. And more importantly, where my organization is concerned, the collaboration that we have with the BMF, I think speaks to my heart. But before I commence, before I talk about the message that I'd like to give you from the sponsor, as it were, I'm standing here challenged and reflecting, especially after listening to our president here. And I'm challenged as one of the young leaders of my organization, asking myself if I truly am part of the change narrative of my organization. Am I really having the right kind of conversations, and am I leading the charge in the transformation agenda of the organization that I work for? I'm asking myself those questions. I'm also asking myself the questions that, even when we talk about our customer value propositions, do they really speak to the people or the masses that we claim to be serving as an organization? I really am challenged. I truly am. And also quite ashamed that I'm not a member of the BMF, but that will soon be corrected, I can assure you. Without much further ado, we can all agree that this is a happy occasion and it's happening at such a hopeful moment. I think I just want to also share with you that 2 days ago, and I think your president, or our president, let me correct myself because I'm now part of the BMF. I just haven't put pen to paper yet. But our president was also there, and we were celebrating or recognizing the strategic partnerships that we have in both the public and private sectors, as well as the professional bodies that we are associated with. So it was the first one for Old Mutual, and it was so critical because it has fostered all the relationships that we have, and also speaks to what we want to be part of in terms of the change that we want to see in our society. So this is definitely one partnership that I am truly grateful that we are definitely having with the BMF. So the partnership will lead to a greater impact within the transformation landscape, and as it was alluded to earlier, as both organizations' mandates are centered on changing the social economic patterns of the majority of the country's citizens, which is obviously the working class. As Old Mutual, we're certainly committed to making a difference, as we believe in the power of financial education to free us from the challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. We have a comprehensive financial education program that is designed to create positive futures by helping communities to understand the principles of financial freedom, guiding them on how to achieve it every step of the way. The work that we are doing is about balancing the power to create great wealth with that of creating access for many more to share in it. It's also about innovating, leveraging off our people and the technology we have in place to provide more effective, impactful, and simpler solutions for our customers. Also to mention our Masisizane Fund, which is a non-profit funding entity. The Masisizane Fund provides enterprise development to small, medium, and micro enterprises via 2 channels, development financing, and as well as business support. Our proudest moment this year for the Masisizane Fund was the first 100% youth black-owned Wimpy in the Western Cape, and that happens to be the first halal Wimpy in the Western Cape. Thank you. The collaboration between us and the BMF is so fitting because the BMF organization, whose primary role is to develop and empower black managers within organization, it comprises individuals from diverse management disciplines and corporate members as well. So I want to say that, as I've articulated earlier, that we're looking forward to a fruitful partnership and to make a difference, and more importantly, to generate the kind of energy that fuels growth. Developing value-aligned partnerships that focus on common goals and complementary strengths is key to ensuring successful outcomes for all. I also want to share this part before I get off, is that at that very function that I referred to earlier, that one of the keynote speakers on that day spoke about forming strategic partnerships, which is what we're talking about here. And she also mentioned that strategic partnerships are fundamental to driving business outcomes. And I think that this is the start of a very fruitful journey with the BMF, and I'm truly proud to be a part of this journey. Thank you very much for having us this evening as your sponsor, and looking forward to many more. Thank you.
Thank you, BMF member. Thank you, BMF member. You said it mouthful. And it's true, your network is your net worth. how network ali BMF, you'll go far as Old Mutual. Without much waste of time, it's time to talk our number 6. I said it earlier, where Dr. Negota was number 6. Babara lukile mbolo, bara luka mbolo, ba tseba hore hale raloka scheme bana le sir le stages le felete. Number 6 is gona. When he comes and the guy wearing his jersey see him, he just start undressing even before the coach says anything. Am I right? Those who played soccer or whatever sports, when this one comes, even before the coach or any other body realize, the one in the field realizes, hey, that man is here, I must start undressing. Whereas you chickens who have already been competing to be in top number 11 or so, but when he comes, when the real eagle comes, you just make way. That's what we believed in. That's what we knew our Negota for. Without much waste of time, Ritohpela BMF board member, our own Esetu, to come introduce our guest speaker. Over to you.
Firstly, Tato, thank you very much for sponsoring this event, and I totally am with you when you said you feel challenged. Our president has a way at every single function to make you feel very challenged and to start questioning yourself. And, you know, every time I attend the lectures of the past presidents, it makes me think, as this generation, have we really taken the baton and are we doing what we need to do? Just briefly, I remember we called the past presidents to a function to tell us the role and the relevance of the BMF today. And I think it was Babu Don Kwanazio, Eric Mafuna said, you know, I saw this invitation and I thought, why do you want us to tell you the relevance of the BMF today? You are supposed to tell us the relevance of the BMF today. And you know, whenever I listen to the lectures and about the past presidents, I always think of a saying that says, each generation must out of relative obscurity find their own mission and then either fulfill it or betray it. And to my sort of age group and generation, we dare not betray it. And now for what I've actually been tuned to do. Prof. Tinyiko Maluleke is the Deputy Director of the University of Pretoria Center for the Advancement of Scholarship. He is an elected member of the South African Academy of Science. He is ranked B1 by the South African National Research Foundation, meaning that he enjoys considerable international recognition by his peers across the world for the high quality and impact of his research. Prof. Maluleke is a member of the MTN Foundation Board. For the years 2015, 17, and 19, he has been a member of the panel of judges for the Sunday Times National Book Awards in the nonfiction category. He is a regular contributor of opinion pieces in both print and broadcast media. Prof. Maluleke is also a prominent public intellectual and opinion maker with considerable presence within and beyond the national system of innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Professor Tinyiko Maluleke.
Thank you very much. I am so thankful that you introduced me so elegantly and so briefly. I panic sometimes when I get introduced because you never know which part of you will be revealed to the nation. Especially those of us with many parts and who wear many hats. Let me start by protocol, as much protocol as I can master. acknowledging the presence of the president of the BMF. I'm honored that the whole president has taken time to come and listen to me. Very few people are listened to by presidents. You know, the late Mobutu Sese Seko of the DRC Congo, then called Zaire, had banned the title president, so that no one, I know that my friend here is from Brazzaville, no one could be called president, because that title belonged to him alone. So, yeah. I also am honored to see Ubaba Pegis Biela. Mangibona wena, hayi ngiyaqina. Ngiyabonga ukukubona. I also want to acknowledge the provincial chairperson of the BMF, as well as the team that she leads. I don't know the names of everyone, but I want to say thank you for inviting me and for allowing me to speak to you. Ndiko nyaga ulumelisa baha Negota. Dandichiko budzisa ngei ndandichiri ba Negota bapfimini vachi dziamba. Ndasiwane mutu ungara abadivei va Negota. Havana mukara vatombudza pedzi uri hai hezvo hasi zvone. Mara havongombudza uri zvone ndizvipiyo. So I wanted to greet the Negota family in their own clan name, and I tried to get the clan name outside. I didn't succeed. Daba mudau ndizvone. And it's really an honor for me to speak to you all. I was fortunate enough to have had to say a word at the funeral of Mr. Negota. And it was also by accident that I said a word there, because the person who was supposed to speak was the late Judge Maluleke, not me. And he decided to get ill and asked me to speak on his behalf. His younger brother is here today. Even today, I have learned that I am the spare wheel. The person who was supposed to speak was Professor Marwala. Now, fortunately, Professor Marwala is a very good friend of mine. I was even trying to chat to him as I was sitting there to say, you see what you got me into. But it's a pleasure. It's a substitute position I take with a lot of pride, because I and Professor Marwala, together with Mr. Sam Tima and the late Negota, sat in many, many meetings to speak about how Mr. Richard Maponya could be honored at the University of Johannesburg. And it was partly because of our effort together that you now have the Richard Maponya Lecture at the University of Johannesburg. You also have a division that is named after him at the University of Johannesburg. Thanks to Mr. Negota, Professor Marwala, and myself. Thank you very much. No words can explain my joy at being invited by such an iconic organization as the Black Management Forum to deliver the inaugural event, which is aimed at honoring such a hands-on thought leader in the transformation of both the public and private sectors since our democracy. Being here today, I feel like I stand on the shoulders of two giants. The one giant being the BMF, and the other being George Negota. In their own way, each of these giants have been sources of inspiration to me as a young person whose life was split between Limpopo and Soweto, and whose life chances were severely constrained by the apartheid system. Although I am an ordinary academic in many ways, I am also a manager and have been for 2 decades at inside of the university system in South Africa. And so I've always looked at Mr. Negota as an inspiration, and at the Black Forum Management Forum as my organization. I won't do what she just did, acknowledging that she's not a member. I am a member. It is not an accident that the Black Management Forum was founded in the year of storms, the year 1976. That year in which the students, initially in Soweto, but later all over the country, stood up and said to MC Botha and the apartheid regime, enough is enough. It was a year when the students cried out to the gods and to God, alike asking, Senzeni na? For me, it is not an accident also that Eric Mafuna and company, who, by the way, is another child of Limpopo, were inspired to establish the BMF in that year, at that point in our history. Maybe we should add Limpopo to the name Black Management Forum, because it was originated by a child of this province. What a privilege it is for me to address this iconic organization of the South African struggle. What a privilege it is for me to honor one of its finest presidents, the President George Negota, of whom Ruel Khoza had this to say in his eulogy, and I quote Ruel Khoza. He said of George Negota, during your tenure as the president of Black Management Forum, the organization grew in stature and number of branches, increased observably. Your interactive, pragmatic, and transformative leadership style enriched the culture of the BMF, rendering it as humane and humanistic as it was sophisticated and effective, end of quote. Now, there is a billion stars in the sky. Those who know tell us. In fact, they say several billions. But only a few are observable by the naked eye. Fewer still shine brightly enough to be noticed. There is 1 billion people on the African continent. The vast majority of them are condemned to a life of struggle and a life of poverty. And yet every day and every year, in many different ways, millions of African men and women defy the brutal circumstances that attend to their historical experiences as a people. Like the mythical phoenixes of ancient Greece, Africans rise out of the ashes of hopelessness daily. Like truth crushed to earth, as one American poet once said, Africans rise again and again. Many times I draw my inspiration from the stories of achievement, the stories of success by ordinary people who come from communities whose prospects were deliberately engineered to ensure a permanent state of despair. Maya Angelou must have had the likes of George Negota in mind when she wrote about those who rise like dust out of histories that have been distorted with bitter, twisted lies. In his life, George Manda Negota embodied the African spirit of resilience. He was born in 1951 outside Makado in Limpopo to a poor family in a poor, and I must add, not only poor, but oppressed community. So dire was the situation in his family, he had to drop out of school prematurely in order to take care of siblings and other members of the extended family. And yet, Negota's hunger for education and his thirst for knowledge, his knack for entrepreneurship were always in evidence from the time when he was young up to the time when he passed on. When living in Middleland, Soweto, Negota's life was structured in this manner. By day, he worked. By night, he studied by correspondence. And over weekends, he supplemented his meager income by selling handkerchiefs, among other things. How did he do it? A few years after he started working, Negota ended up in the legal department of the giant multinational Mobil Oil in the USA, where he worked and garnered valuable experience. Upon his return home, he made his vast legal and business skills available to the service of his beloved country, which was emerging out of the heinous apartheid system. The mind boggles at how he managed not only to multiply himself, but also at how he managed to get so much done within a 24-hour day, a 7-day-long week, a 30-day-long month, and a year that has only 365 days. When Negota died, he was in his mid-60s. But I want to submit to you that his achievements in both the public and private sectors are those of a man who lived and worked until he was 85 years old, at least. How did one man manage to pack so much into his short life? How did a boy from Chitandani end up in smoke-filled boardrooms, leading discussions and designing plans about the privatization of selected state-owned enterprises such as ISCO and National Sorghum Breweries? How did a school dropout end up with qualifications and become a qualified, see now. So I was still marveling at the ability of this rural man ending up in all these boards. This dropout ending up a qualified lawyer and a practicing attorney with a string of qualifications. B. Juris, LLB, higher diploma in company law, higher diploma in tax law, BA honors, Bachelor of Commerce, honors of the same degree, and Master of Commerce. How did he do all of these, having dropped out when he was so young in order to help his siblings? Now, just the number of nationally significant economic projects in which he was involved are too many to list. For our first democratic government, Negota was clearly one of the go-to persons. And the transformation and the repurposing of particularly our transport sector is something in which he played a key role. When problems emerged in both the private and public sectors, when the government needed a cool head and some skilled hands, Negota was always at hand to say, Tumamina, long before Tumamina became fashionable. In his short lifetime, Negota also conducted the following commissions of inquiry long before Judge Zondo came along. He was asked to conduct an inquiry, commission of inquiry into the mismanagement in the bus industry of the Northwest Province. He was invited to conduct an inquiry into the alleged mismanagement of private donor funds by the Gauteng government. He also led an inquiry into mismanagement at the University of Venda. He chaired an inquiry into the causes of violence in the taxi industry in KwaZulu-Natal. He was chairperson of the Gautrain Social Economic Development Committee long before the Gautrain became a reality. He was chief negotiator for the Durban City BRT in KwaZulu-Natal, and in 2001, he was appointed the chair of the Commission of Inquiry into the train accident that took place in Tembisa. Just look at the array of things that he was asked to lead and to do. And add to these his pioneering role in the establishment of the South African Long Distance Taxi Association, the National Transport Organization. The spirit of George Negota hovers over both our private and public sectors. Whether one speaks about the transformation of the former homeland investment entities into instruments of transformation for the new dispensation, whether one speaks of the imagination and conceptualization of instruments for the construction and maintenance of our key national road networks, when one speaks of the train systems we have come to know today and to take for granted, when one speaks about the creation of the very first funding instruments for black small and medium enterprises, the name of George Negota pops up again and again. And yet, he still made time for family and time to establish his own companies and his own businesses, doing all these with probity, elegance, and balance. So, what are the salient lessons we can learn from George Negota? I forgot to tell you that the title of my talk is George Negota and the BMF as Keepers of the Sacred Trust of Leadership. And I think there are 5 things we can learn from George Negota about leadership. The first is that leadership matters. It matters in South Africa, it matters in Africa and in the world. 20 years after his country gained its independence, Chinua Achebe, the late Nigerian writer, noticed that wherever he went in Lagos, in the drinking holes, at bus stops, at pubs and nightclubs, Nigerians were speaking, and they always began their conversations with the phrase, "The trouble with Nigeria is," I wish I could do the Nigerian accent, because they did it in the Nigerian accent. "The trouble with Nigeria is." What frustrated Achebe was not merely that people held divergent opinions as to what the trouble with Nigeria was. What irked him was how it seemed that people were too scared to say what they think and to think what they say. In other words, people were not like the president of the BMF at that time. They didn't say what they think, and they didn't think before they said what they said. And that troubled Chinua Achebe. Everywhere he went, he found that people were mealy-mouthed and fearful, using big words, but you didn't know what they were saying actually. So he sat down and penned an angry little book with the simple but most familiar title in Lagos. The title of that book was The Trouble with Nigeria. It was published in 1984. That little book starts with the elephant in the room and stays only with the elephant in the room up to the end. The very first paragraph in that booklet goes like this, and I quote, very first paragraph, the opening of the book. The trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. There is nothing wrong with the Nigerian character. There is nothing wrong with the Nigerian land or climate or water or air or anything else. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of personal example, which is the hallmark of true leadership, end of quote. In the rest of the book, Achebe explains how and why this was happening in his own country. Now, I think if we just replace Nigeria with South Africa, we could be talking about contemporary South Africa. The trouble with South Africa is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. All of our problems can be summarized under this subheading of a failure of leadership. Leadership matters, Chinua Achebe argued in that little book. A country is in trouble when people who want and can't lead proceed to occupy leadership positions. When such people evade and avoid the tough decisions, and when such people follow their followers so that they and their followers become followers who chase the wind, then the country is in trouble. A few years ago, Ruel Khoza issued that very problematic statement that got him into a lot of trouble. Maybe because he included it in the company report, the chairman's section. In there he said, there is a strange breed of leaders in South Africa who are unable to lead us in the 21st century. He never mentioned anybody's name. But he got into so much trouble and got attacked for saying it. But here is Achebe, many years ago, essentially making the same point. Leadership is about the constant generation of fresh ideas. If leaders are not able to generate fresh ideas, they are not leading. They shouldn't be there. Because you can only lead with ideas, and those ideas must be fresh and different. Leadership is about the firing up of imagination. Imagination that is sometimes born out of anger and dissatisfaction about the present and sometimes about the past circumstances. Nothing wrong with being angry about what's going on and what has been going on in the country. Leadership is about the transformation of that dissatisfaction into concrete goals. It is about the charting of a course towards the achievement of those goals and the pursuit of those goals with determination, always with a view to the future and to the next generation. Let me quickly add that when I talk about leadership and leaders, I'm not talking about individuals only. I'm talking about the BMF as leader. I'm talking about Old Mutual as leader. I'm talking about the local Stockfell as leader. I'm talking about your local congregation as leader. Leadership is that which is done not only or merely by individuals. The second takeaway from the life of George Negota is that knowledge matters. I said leadership matters, knowledge matters. I find it remarkable that when Negota met his untimely death in 2017 in his mid-60s, he was registered for a doctorate at the UNISA Business School. And the title of his thesis, which he was going to write, I quote, was "A conceptual developmental procurement model through public-private partnership, the case of South Africa." That was the title of his thesis, and he was busy writing it up. In this regard, his death was rather cruel. Imagine what procurement model this man could have developed, given his vast hands-on experience in society, in labor, in management, and in government. Imagine what ideas he might have generated, given his intimate and practical knowledge of policy development. Imagine what solutions might have emerged out of the lessons he had gleaned from his extended interactions with labor, with executive management, as well as his keen understanding of the needs of what Ruel Khoza calls all these national stakeholders and publics. Now, if you look at Negota's CV, you will see that he was a multidisciplinary thinker. He was a lawyer, but he was also an economist, and quite at home with the accounting sciences too. He was a commercial scientist and a business scientist. And above all, he was also a businessman. So here was a businessman who believed it was important to have knowledge. Here was a leader, a lawyer who believed it was not enough just to know the law. You also needed to know the business side. But for him, education was not merely about certification. What makes Negota an educated man is that he knew that he did not know everything. Now, anyone who thinks they know everything, regardless of how many degrees they have, they are not educated. You are only educated when every time you get a qualification, you realize how little you know, how much more there is to know. And I think he knew this because every time he got a qualification, he went for another one. He died trying to get yet another qualification. If he was still alive today, I think he might be doing another doctorate, as far as I can see. The third takeaway from his life is that ethics matter. And let me start with a very long quote about his character from his friend and colleague for many years, Ruel Khoza. And he said this again about him. George was a man of great character, defined by honesty, elegance, simplicity, and good taste. As a matter of stance, George said much in a few words, selected among his thoughts carefully, orderly arranged what he said, and he spoke with composure. Probity characterized George in that he behaved in a manner that was essentially beyond reproach. He could have very well chosen to abuse his standing and access political largesse for ill-begotten self-enrichment. He, instead, stood for sheer grit, diligence, personal discipline, and dedication to national stewardship. He realized his life ambition, not a whiff of scandal. End of quote. Not a whiff of scandal. Almost all the major problems in the world today, including poverty, violence, and climate change, can be traced back to the lack of ethical intelligence among leaders, but also the lack of ethical intelligence in our policies. South Africa's, we often talk about emotional intelligence. So I'm introducing to you the concept of ethical intelligence. It's as important as both IQ and EQ. South Africa's wicked problems can also be explained in this manner. What are our wicked problems? Now, the ANC never tires of telling us of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. They don't always add corruption. It should also be added. But all four of them, if you think hard about it, lack of ethical intelligence and ethical conduct is at the heart of them. We don't have poverty in this country because there's not enough food or there's not enough money. We have poverty because it is wrongly and deliberately wrongly distributed, the wealth. In this sense, there's only one model of leadership that really matters in the world: the leadership of example, the leadership by example. And this is the form of leadership, ethical leadership, that we don't have, or we have in very little supply in this country. The fourth takeaway is that imagination matters. I think it's the fifth. Imagination matters. Now, let me describe this one this way. So in March this year, the London-based Nigerian writer, you shouldn't ask an academic to come and talk about a businessman. You get a lot of books referred to. Earlier this year in March, the Nigerian writer Ben Okri published his book called The Freedom Artist. It's a very new book. It just come out recently. And I'm talking about imagination. In that book, Ben Okri takes the reader into a dystopian world which feels familiar and strange, which feels far and near, which feels likely and unlikely. It also feels believable, but also unbelievable, all at once. So the setting of this book is not Nigeria, it's not South Africa, it's not Uganda, it's a world that is different. Now imagine a world of splendor, but that world is also a giant prison. It's a little bit like South Africa, imagining South Africa as a psychiatric hospital, the whole country. Life at Esidimeni, from Messina to Cape Town. All of us are asylum patients will live in that hospital. This is the kind of painting that Ben Okri produces in this book. In that country, citizens are forbidden from talking about a prison or talking about the mental asylum. They're not allowed to talk about it. So you live in a prison, but you are told never mention it. You live in a mental asylum, you are told never talk about it. Because if you talk about it, you might get ideas about freedom. So it is banned. You are not allowed to talk about it. Imagine a world in which the rich minority live large while the poor majority suffer. In fact, in this book, Ben Okri paints pictures of the poor fighting over pieces of bread at street corners, while the rich are living at large in their mansions. But here's the thing. In this world, books, language, art, myths, thinking, and asking questions are also strictly forbidden. So there's even a group of people called the question askers. So when the police come, they say, have you seen any question asker today? So anyone who asks questions gets arrested, and many of them never return from prison. It is a world ruled by a faceless hierarchy who have a police force. Now, the police force in Ben Okri's book do not control riots with guns and tear gas. Guess what they do? The police force are cannibals. They eat the people themselves. And so in that country, you meet a lot of people. Some don't have ears. Others have half a nose. Others have got the upper lip is gone because the police ate them. And guess who helps the police to eat the people? It is the rich and their children. They jump in when the orgy starts of eating the restless masses. But in that world, in Ben Okri's book, The Freedom Artist, there's also a tiny minority of people who gallantly resist all of these things. There's a family, because the whole society has even forgotten how to write. They've even forgotten how to speak, because for such a long time, they were not allowed to speak. So people just use emojis, and they go like this to talk to one another. The words do not come out. They've forgotten them. They don't know how to put a book together. But a tiny minority of people are trying to keep these arts. There's a family that looks after books and hides them, and there are others who are trying to make sure that questions continue to be asked, that thinking continues, even though it is banned. Now, after reading Ben Okri's book, one cannot help the feeling that there are several ways in which our country is becoming like that world. Think about it. Is it normal what men are doing to women in this country? Is it normal? It's cannibalistic. It's out of control. They don't care whether it's 16 days or it is Women's Day. They just go on and carry on. And maybe our country is a prison. Our country is a mental asylum. Maybe this is the country that Ben Okri is writing about. To conclude, what then does it mean for the BMF to be leader? And what does it mean for the BMF and you and I to pick up the baton from George Negota? I want to conclude with a quotation from Achebe again in a different book from the one I referred to. He writes an essay about leadership, and Martin Luther King Jr. And in the middle of that essay, he says, and I quote him, "Leadership is a sacred trust. No one gets into it lightly or unadvisedly." Now, when I read this, I thought, I think Chinua Achebe was not writing about my country, because if he was, he should change that sentence. He should say, no one should get into it lightly or unadvisedly. He shouldn't say no one gets into it lightly, because I see many people getting into leadership lightly. I see Trump getting into leadership lightly and calling us Sithole countries. You know, when I say Sithole, I just don't want to use that word. There are far too many leaders in the world today who get in very lightly, but he says no one should get into leadership lightly, and I continue to quote. "Because it demands qualities of mind and discipline of body and will far beyond the need of the ordinary citizens." Now, those of us who talk a lot in this country with big mouths, we often get told, you know, you say that and that, would you do better if you were leader, if you were president? I'm not president, and I don't want to be president. After the plane has crashed, I've never heard someone say, would you do better if you were pilot? I'm not pilot. Let's talk about what's going wrong. Leadership demands qualities of mind and discipline of body which are far beyond the need of ordinary citizens. Let that sink in. For us as individuals, for us as organizations, whatever the organizations we lead are, not just the BMF. Anybody who offers himself, continues Achebe, or herself, or is offered to society for leadership must be aware of the unusually high demands of the role and should, if in any doubt whatsoever, firmly refuse the prompting. So if you are not sure you have what it takes in terms of self-control, in terms of giving a personal example, Achebe says you should refrain. I think George Negota was one such leader. And we are very lucky that our lives have overlapped with his. And we are very lucky that our organization, the BMF, can count him amongst its leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. I don't believe anyone could have done it better. Let's clap hands once more. Three virtues: leadership, wisdom, and ethics. Three virtues: leadership, wisdom, or knowledge, and ethics. Number 6 I believe at the right time, we could learn from the right people. But imagine a chicken tied for 3 days. After the 4th day, where you are freed, and there is the chicken, still sitting as if still tied. But a chicken, you are freed. Look at the chicken. Yes, I think for 400 years, as South Africans, we've been oppressed. And after oppression, after apartheid, they say you are free, black man. Black man is just sitting as if still oppressed. But thank you for sharing this wisdom today. I think we are free people. BMF has freed us. The Negota family, thank you for raising such a son, such a blessing. We are free. Prof Maluleke, Prof, a great friend. I think you are happy today that this day has been delivered. RFM Prof Matso, a great friend, and Risa Lebiale will ask our BMF board, led by the president, to come to the fore. Our stalwart, Ndate, be at this side. Our chairperson, by Old Mutual, I will see. Barbudi Chore, Mr. Negota, which is BMF from Carlton Center. I tisam the Chachachaching. If Nasin Tatene Negota, BMF will still be in Carlton Center. Look today, Nali with Dr. Mudau, got Toyando. BMF wana Toyando again. BMF wana Polokwani, Austulas, Arle Winter Dinekota. BMF wana Mkopane, if Wanyaka joiner, Date Desmond Matiano Wanamo. And I must say, BMF Iwanako Rhodes University. Amela Ausle was nomad. If Owana. This little girl is the chairperson of the Rhodes University student chapter. Kianam Redwas nomad. Kianam Redwas nomad. Only the BMF student chapter, Yakun Vistov, Rhodes University. All because of Dr. Negota. We'll switch off the lights and I'll just let them. As I will be watching a video, the live and times, Negota. But before you go there, I have a question for my people. How balanced is your life? How balanced is your life? From the life Negota, I think Ritutile. Where can Nakele Dr. Snomadi, I have learned when I let show, as we say, how balanced your life, there's something called life will balance. And Kelemwile in Negota, he has lived as a good example. Number one in my balance, health. How do you rate your health? How healthy are you as a person? How do you take your health? Number two is relationships. How do you value your relationships? Dr. Negota was a father, a mentor, and everything. And if you ask his children, to some extent, but he did manage to. Number three is the profession. He was an example, a black manager. Number four, I'm talking about 4 areas. How balanced our lives? Health, relationships, profession, and business. This man would balance Sekam Wena, that's my question. Business, we all know that we're all born business people. Our hands were did Lord like this. This is really a gift, a seed, an assignment. Today, I think I'll speak about later. Today, am I making sense? As blacks, we're still fighting for crumbles. Whereas the rich, they are busy sharing, dividing what's theirs. We have minerals, we have everything, but as the poor, we are busy rabakamero. Badishong, baalana the big stakes. And now we are just given crumbles. Without much ado, we're gonna be watching a video, the Life and Times, Dr. Negota. Prof, thank you so much for the great speech. We'll ever cherish this. I think the video, as the BMF, will make sure you fit in every household. We'll make sure as the BMF, this video is being shared in every household. Thanks. Realeboga, that was Negota for you. That was Negota for you. And as I indicated earlier, if it was another country, something could be done or will be done. And like South Africa, we're going to do something. President, are you ready? But before the President, I'll tell you, Africa is sharing African solutions. Regards expected solutions Africa, America, or Australia, or you know, solution, Mr. Negota, for Africa. In a low developer infrastructure you need. I can take wrong answers too. Train. Oh, who came with how train? Mr. Negota, ne? And toll concessions. The Rent Airport. Some of us are so started with dream and we believe they are impossible. President, over to you.
This is not going to be my second speech because I can take longer. But I wanted to announce formally in front of the family today that as the BMF, we have created what we call a litigation fund. The fund is meant to challenge laws and assist black managers and black businesses that finds difficult in executing their business work, or managers that are being ill-treated at work, but more importantly, to actually put to a test certain laws that have been put in place, either in the form of legislation or regulation, that seems not to be helping black people to advance. So we call a fund, we created a fund in about 3 months ago, and this fund has a crowdfunding platform where members of society can donate from a minimum of 100 rands and to no limit for the maximum. The fund is meant, as I've said, to do this type of work. It is actually is actually there to assist our legislative efforts in trying to transform our society. We are now formally announcing that that fund is no longer just going to be limitedly called a litigation fund, BMF litigation fund. It's actually going to be called a George Negota litigation fund. We're attributing his name to the fund because of his own involvement in law and because of his own involvement in developing black people, because of his own involvement and participation in business. We therefore declare the fund a George Negota litigation fund. I thank you.
Thank you, President. Yes, KBMF. Okano ilikansale ada developed countries, then legacy ya Negota e tlo tswela pele go phela. A re sa bolela ka vacancy, re bolela ka legacy. A re sa bolela ka tragedy, re bolela ka legacy. Without much ado, re tla be re kgopela family, ba tla ba re fe mantswe a ditebogo. Ke sa le highlightela gore ba bolela ba re, yes, if National Education Fund, as an organization, we're gonna bleed. As a country, we are bleeding already. We are, I think, we are just watching. Like a cycle in two sides. You know, okay? Never what's a mark, a cycle in any sides. Cycle in two sides, inside and outside. Cycle in two sides, inside and outside. And you decide, or you go outside the cycle or inside the cycle. Inside the cycle, only 11 players and 11 players. Outside, masses. I want to influence on the outcome. The masses, they don't have any influence on them. Thank you, President, and your board. We are now, number 6 is ours. We're going to influence these things. If we are not happy, they must come. They must visit us at night. Or are you happy? We say, we'll think about it. These days, when there's legislation or anything passed, we are not considered as people. We might be in majority, isn't it? But there comes a time, my Lord, they must consult with us. Whether it's night or day, we'll tell them the same answer. Baga Negota, ikatametseng. I heard this guy mpotsa, hey, Snomadi, you must learn to sweat more in practice so that you bleed less in war. Sweat more in practice so that you bleed less in war.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Program Director. All protocol observed. Kibona Tate Sibiye, Tate Maluleke, Program Director Dr. Snomadi. But we say thank you very much for not getting tired, for being with us, even in the most difficult of times. You know, one day I went to a meeting, to some bank, and then all of a sudden I see this 5 guys coming to the meeting. And I said, but I was expecting 1 guy. But no. We hunt in packs. We don't hunt solo. So we don't operate solo. A pack, a team. We hunt together. Kinali ntate Vikimo, Negota. Kinali Bokotsimnene, Bukuta. The George's younger brother. Kinali Borampaban. Kangarauteng, the son, Limoni, Opan is here, the other son. There's also the girl, the sister, is not with us. Ndinabona kudzapa. Son boy, man, son boy. You know, these are all, all names. What beginning was son boy. But no falibito fellow, vet boy. But such is life. I think we came to get used to that. There's a very critical and telling contribution that. And I see I was very inspired when I heard the president speaking at BMF about some of these things, So there's this telling and critical contribution that Africa and Africans in general made to the civilization of mankind. This contribution came through a concept called Ubuntu, Wutu. Ubuntu means humanity, humanness, morality, Professor, compassion. It stresses conciliation, harmony through social relations with the group, self-fulfillment through taking part in collective whole, duties towards others, caring, warmth, empathy, respect for older people who have more knowledge of life than younger ones, and communication, and it emphasizes group solidarity as opposed to individual interest. It condemns dog-eat-dog competition and adversarial relations. Instead of confrontation, it seeks cooperation. Now, in the case of, and you'll understand why I'm saying this. In the case of S versus Makwanyama, the first constitutional case, landmark case that pronounced on the death penalty, this is what they had to say. And this was Judge Mukhoro talking about Ubuntu. Generally, Ubuntu translates as humanness. In its most fundamental sense, it translates as personhood, as morality. Metaphorically, it expresses itself as umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. Mutu ndi mutu ngabangwe bathu. Describing the significance of group solidarity on survival issues so central to the survival of communities. While it envelops the key values of group solidarity: compassion, respect, human dignity, conformity to basic norms, and collective unity in its fundamental sense. It denotes humanity and morality. Its spirit emphasizes respect for human dignity, marking a shift from confrontation to reconciliation in South Africa. Ubuntu has become a notion with particular resonance in the building of democracy, close quote. This is what Judge Mukhoro had to say about Ubuntu. It is part of our rainbow heritage, though it might have operated and still operates differently in diverse community settings. For those of us who knew George well, it should be relatively easy for you to understand why this concept has so much relevance today. I say that Ubuntu underscores human civilization no less in the commercial world because it is Ubuntu that underlies the institution of family, both the nucleus family and the extended family. It is the attribute of Ubuntu that manifests itself in group solidarity that gave rise to the idea of a stokvel, a burial society, an insurance company, a bank, an incorporated listed company. All of this trades on trust, solidarity, reciprocity, shared sense of belonging, collective ownership, all of which are key and central attributes of Ubuntu. Thanks to Ubuntu, we have commerce in its modern form. It is surprising but understandable, though, of course not acceptable, at just how much in denial the world is about just how much Ubuntu made commerce into what it is today. And this, of course, talks to how much of what is African was turned into what is not African. George understood what Martin Luther meant when he said that all humans are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. He equally embraced what Karl Marx meant when he said society does not consist of individuals, but expresses the sum of interrelations, the relations within which individuals stand. Immanuel Kant argued that if you consider that it is morally good to be kind to others, then you must be kind to others at all times for the reasons that kindness is morally good and therefore a duty, and he called this the categorical imperative. He contrasted this with what he called the hypothetical imperative, which basically means that people sometimes do good to others simply because it is profitable to do so, not more, less. This is what is sometimes called the liberal capital ethic. George's entire life journey was guided by Kant's categorical imperative. It was informed by the dictates of Ubuntu, and it was grounded in it. It is for this reason that for George, the idea of Ubuntu and free market enterprise were mutually supportive, not antagonistic to each other. Wherever George is, he's probably nodding in appreciation at this fine gesture in exercise of Ubuntu by the BMF and all its partners. I'm therefore thoroughly convinced that I will not be contradicting or misrepresenting George's position and views, and indeed of his entire family, when I say that the family expresses its heartfelt appreciation for this selfless exercise. To the BMF President, Mr. Andile Nomlala, your presence has not gone unnoticed and means a lot to us. Highly appreciated. To BMF Limpopo Chairperson, Ms. Angie Ramaipadi, your generosity is well received and noted. Our sponsors, of course, without sponsors, if you forget sponsors, you are in trouble. Things don't, you have to make sure you remember sponsors. Mrs. Tato Mahapane, Abari Chireri Karat. You know what that means in Venda, Abari Chireri. You get an interpreter, there's a lady that speaks Venda behind you, she will tell you what that means. For without sponsors, what will this occasion be? To our keynote speaker, Maluleke, we're always going up and down together. We appreciate the sacrifices you make. I'm sure maybe the BMF poured petrol for you, we don't know, but we normally do. When we invite you, we just invite you, you pour your own petrol, you do your own things. So all the kind ways that you had for our brother, father, uncle, and friend are received with boundless appreciation. Of course, to those who prepared the video, where words fail us to express our full appreciation. To all the wonderful men and women who thought it appropriate to come and grace this occasion, all of you. And as I said, all protocol observed. For without you, everything would simply amount to zero. We simply do not have enough ways to express our gratitude. And by the way, when I speak about family, there's other two members of the family here. These are, we have extended families. Maluleke, he became an extended member of the Negota family. We've got Bomohale. He became an extended member. He probably knows George, I don't know for how long. I see there's another family sitting at the back, Bosuzane. But we also have the Madajes, who have now become part of the Negota family, because now Opani decided to marry their daughter. So they've become part of the Negota family. So when I say the Negota family, I speak on behalf of all this and for those who are not here. Nyedisani is also here. To Program Director, job well done. I thank you, Nda Rolibu.
Realebo, without much ado, BMF Limpopo, le cordial vote of thanks. Awesumlalo, you're welcome. And then I'll ask members, if you have legs, please stand up. Am I still in charge? If you have legs, still stand up. If you have a phone like this one, just yamolabaran photos. If you have a phone like this one, go to that portion called photos, media or something. Get to that portion. Am I still in charge? If you have a smartphone like this one, and just go to this thing called click and take a photo of anything you see here. Am I still in charge? I see some of you are not doing what. Take a photo, the picture, Negota, whatever. Whatever you see and you think it's worth sharing, and go hashtag, go Facebook or whatsoever. You know our motto today. Hashtag George Negota annual George Negota lecture. Are you at clicking point or where, you know? Yeah? I will hashtag. Yeah, clicking already. You know, there's this thing about knowledge is power, and I'm disputing it. I don't agree with these people who say knowledge is power. Our chairperson, Nyako, LUBF, Raludumedis, and Reataba Lewana. Are we done? Yes, I'm saying knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. If you apply, if you do what you are supposed to do, and you do it well, that's you are powerful. Are we done? Let's share that. And without us, this won't grow. It will just be a fallacy. We're just here to eat and what. But if we share with the world, or Africa, Limpopo, BMF, then we know we're somewhere. I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you, BMF, thank you, family, thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to lead you in this important occasion. I'm honored. Thank you.
Good evening, BMF Negota family. I would like to say thank you to the Negota family and also to the BMF family. The reason why I call BMF family is because ever since I became part of this organization, all I've seen are the features and the characteristics that you find in a family. So as I stand here, I would like to say to the Negota family, thank you for giving us Ubaba, Kosiashu, wa George Manda Negota, Harkoribowa. It is the family that gives you the support and shapes the kind of individual that grows up and leads nations. So Mr. Negota became that person because that structure was there. And to my BMF family, from all the stalwarts that are here, our president and the leadership for the province and the leadership for the branches, the young professionals, the student chapter, we thank you for making this day possible. I would like to thank Ume Angie Ramaipati for making this possible and making it possible in this year. That is a great achievement. And to our president for honoring us tonight and being here with us. It means a lot for us as Limpopo and for us as the BMF family. And to our sponsors, Old Mutual, on behalf of the Black Management Forum, we thank you. It wouldn't have been possible if you didn't see this as an important event that you needed to be part of. And you came here and you gave us a word of support as a message from the sponsor, and you spoke about strategic partnerships. So as the Black Management Forum, we would like to invite you to join us and continue in this journey and be our sponsor even in the following year. And to our keynote speaker, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, as I stand here, I'd like to make an oath that if you speak after the professor has spoken, you are bound to be a professor as well. So, it's still a long way to go, but it is good footsteps to follow. So I thank you for coming here and sharing about the life of Mr. George Negota. You are one of the privileged who got an opportunity to share a life with him. So as I was sitting there, I envied what you experienced with Mr. Negota. And for me, sitting there, it was a liberating moment. And I would say that even for most of us, it was a liberating moment. When you zoomed in into all the things that could have been excuses about him dropping out, about him being a rural man. Most of us see ourselves as rural men and women, but despite of all those challenges, he managed to be the star that was shining, and people are still able to speak about his achievements even today. So thank you very much for sharing with us and letting us experience a glimpse of the opportunity that you got. You spoke about him being a lover of education, knowledge, and entrepreneurship. Those are the things that if we fall in love with, even today, we are going to bring the so desired change in this country. Our president, for naming the litigation fund, the George Negota Litigation Fund, we thank you. That shows that if you live and stand by your beliefs, people will recognize you and they will honor you even when you are no longer around. To our family, the Negota family, thank you once again for allowing us to have this moment and this time to celebrate a life well lived. Reko uliboa. I would like to come back to the words of Dr. Snomadi when he was here saying that the circle has two sides, the inside and the outside. So I would like to say thank you to everyone that joined us tonight. As I thank you, I would also like to welcome you to the BMF family. The circle of the BMF, in the inside there is still space. So you're welcome to join us. You can join us here in the province. If you're not from around, make sure that when you get back to your respective provinces, you find out about where the BMF is. And by joining us, you will be able to share in this vision. Allow me to read about what the Black Management Forum is about before I go and sit down. The Black Management Forum has been in existence for 43 years. It is a thought leadership organization with the main purpose of influencing socio-economic transformation in our country in pursuit of socio-economic justice, fairness, and equity. The BMF stands for the development and empowerment of managerial leadership and the creation of managerial structures and processes that reflect the demographics and values of the wider society. For me, when I joined the BMF, it's because the BMF is about the development of managerial leadership. The BMF is about proving that you, as the Black woman or the Black man, are able to achieve what everyone else is achieving. So I would like to thank you all for tonight and giving us the opportunity to become liberated and also celebrate the life well lived of Mr. George Negota. I thank you.
Oh, yes, yeah. Thank you. Captain, my captain. The captain didn't die. The captain just multiplied. We're just talking earlier when the Negota was like number 6. And for those who are soccer and those who still want to grow children, soccer, they know. Or number 6, get this type of guys who are robalanga di koko. Let it say koko again. Lema blocks. The koko lema blocks tiang. They are very smelly. But number 6, after the game, when everybody's happy and is ulating and they are celebrating, number 6 is tired to death. If I'm making sense. Number 6 is usually tired to death. Number 6 is the kind of people by Lore. When people go to work, he goes there running in the morning and back. When guys have finished running, to practice, he still remain at the field. On the weekend, when it's a big match, we know when he's there, we are going to win. But most of us don't know what goes behind the scenes. Even our number 6, we really, I'm not sure if most of us knew what was going behind the scenes to be the person he was, how much sacrifice he made. I'm glad today you shared this moment. And as I'm saying, it's a legacy. A lower way passed it on, but I'm saying he did multiply. We could see, for some, we complain when you're doing good things to others, isn't it? We're used to the nature, yaorka complain. But we have learned, or number 6, I complain, because there's something after. They continue to live even after they've died. Without much waste of time, the video will continue to play for those who would like to learn more from the legend, and food will be served outside. And we indicated earlier, or your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. Let's continue to network.